Allow yourself to rest gently in this moment, wherever you are, knowing that the coming hours belong only to you. Feel your body slowly letting go of the weight it carried through the day. Notice how your shoulders soften, how your breath becomes quieter, deeper, more natural. The noise of the modern world begins to fade, as though it were a distant echo dissolving into silence. Together, we begin a calm journey through stories of awakening, kindness, and quiet understanding. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that our true nature has never been broken, never disturbed. It has always been whole, always serene. Tonight, through soft stories and gentle reflections, you will remember what has always lived within you. Like a lamp that has never gone out but was merely hidden beneath layers of dust, your inner peace waits patiently to be revealed. As your breathing slows, let your imagination travel to ancient lands, where mountains touch the sky and rivers flow with timeless rhythm. There, seekers of truth discovered insights that still illuminate the human heart. These are not simply tales, but doorways into a quieter way of being. Imagine yourself walking along a narrow path that winds through mist-covered hills. The air is cool against your skin, carrying the fragrance of pine and wild blossoms. Your steps find a natural rhythm on stones shaped by countless pilgrims who walked this way before you. Far across the valley, a bell sounds. Its clear tone lingers in the air long after the vibration has ceased. This is the morning bell of Shoji Temple, where an elderly monk named Dogen has served as its guardian for nearly 4 decades. As dawnlight filters through ancient trees, you approach the temple. The buildings are simple, formed from weathered wood that seems to have grown from the earth itself. Everything here speaks of quiet devotion, of lives dedicated to something deeper than daily urgency. Dogen emerges from the temple, his movements slow yet steady. He walks toward the great bronze bell that hangs beneath a wooden shelter. For more than 300 years, this bell has called generations of monks to meditation. Its voice remains unchanged by time. A young novice approaches Dogen, carrying a question that has weighed on his heart. "Master," he says softly, bowing with respect, "I have practiced meditation for 2 years, yet my mind is still full of thoughts. When I sit in stillness, I find noise instead of peace. The other monks seem calm and focused. What am I doing wrong?" Dogen looks at him with eyes that have witnessed many similar struggles. Instead of answering with words, he lifts the wooden mallet and strikes the bell. The sound flows across the valley, deep and luminous. He strikes it again and again, each tone clear and effortless. "Tell me," Dogen asks gently, "when I strike this bell, does it try to create a beautiful sound? Does it worry whether its voice is pure? Does it compare itself with other bells?" The novice reflects for a moment. "No, master." The bell simply responds. The sound arises naturally. Dogen strikes the bell once more and waits as the sound fades into silence. And when the sound disappears, he asks, "Does the bell cling to it? Does it fear when the next sound will come?" The novice shakes his head slowly. "No." The bell returns to silence without resistance. Dogen sets down the mallet. "Your mind is like this bell. Thoughts arise when conditions are present, just as sound arises when the bell is struck. The bell does not try to stop being a bell when it rings, nor does it try to hold onto the sound when it fades. Your true nature remains peaceful whether thoughts appear or disappear." The young monk's eyes widen with understanding. "So I should not try to stop my thoughts?" he asks. Would you ask the bell not to respond when struck? Dogen replies softly. Instead, be like the bell. Allow thoughts to arise and pass away naturally without grasping or pushing them away. The bell's nature does not change whether it rings or rests in silence. Your nature does not change whether thoughts are present or absent. As the morning unfolds, the novice sits in meditation with a new understanding. When thoughts arise, he no longer fights them. Like the bell's sound flowing through the valley, thoughts come and go within the spacious awareness of his mind. The struggle dissolves, and a deeper peace begins to emerge. Years later, when the novice has become a teacher himself, visitors often remark on the quiet serenity that surrounds him. He always speaks of his old master and points toward the temple bell. That bell taught me everything about meditation, he says with a gentle smile. Our minds are naturally perfect instruments of awareness. We only need to stop trying to become something else. As you rest tonight, remember Dogen's bell. Notice how thoughts rise and fade within your awareness like echoes across a valley. There is no need to fight this movement. No need to judge yourself when your mind wanders. Like the bell returning to silence, your awareness remains unchanged beneath the flow of thoughts. Let your breath deepen as this understanding settles quietly within you. Your mind, like the bell, possesses a natural peace that is never truly disturbed by passing sounds. As your body grows heavier and more relaxed, allow your imagination to drift toward a small temple garden high in the mountains of Tibet. Here, an elderly monk named Tenzin has cared for the same piece of land for 30 years. The garden is famous throughout the region, not for rare flowers or perfect design, but for something far more subtle. Morning sunlight filters through the Himalayan air as you approach Tenzin, who kneels beside a bed of vegetables. His weathered hands move slowly through the soil. Among the carefully tended plants, you notice something unusual. Dandelions bloom beside lotus flowers. Wild grasses grow alongside healing herbs. Thorny vines intertwine with fragrant blossoms. A visiting monk watches with curiosity and confusion. Finally, he steps forward and bows respectfully. "Venerable Tenzin," he says, "I have heard of your garden, yet I do not understand. In my monastery, we remove all weeds to create order and beauty. But here, you seem to welcome everything. Do these wild plants not compete with the cultivated ones?" Tenzin rests back on his heels, his expression calm. He gestures toward the dandelions growing beside the herbs. "Tell me," he asks gently, "who decided that some plants are weeds and others are flowers? Who determined that one form of life is more welcome than another?" The visiting monk begins to answer, then falls silent. Tenzin continues, his voice as soft as the breeze. "When I first came here, I spent my days pulling out what I judged as unwanted. I was tired, frustrated, and the garden never looked the way I imagined it should. One day, I sat quietly among these plants and truly looked at them. I saw that the dandelions fed the bees, that wild grasses protected the soil, that thorny vines sheltered delicate seedlings. I realized that my idea of perfection was causing me to fight against the wisdom of life itself." The visiting monk looks around with new eyes, beginning to sense the hidden harmony. "When I stopped labeling plants as good or bad," Tenzin continues, "and learned to work with their nature, the garden began to flourish in ways I could never have planned." "But surely some plants are harmful," the visitor says. "Some things must be removed." Tenzin smiles softly. "Yes, Sometimes intervention is needed, but I have learned to distinguish between what is truly harmful and what I simply do not understand. Most of what I once fought against was only different from my expectations. As the morning passes, Tenzin shows how he guides the garden with gentle wisdom rather than rigid control. Some plants he relocates, some he prunes, but he no longer wages war against nature. The most important lesson, he says quietly, is that peace does not come from perfect control, but from wise acceptance. This garden taught me to treat my own mind in the same way. Our minds are gardens, he explains. Thoughts and emotions arise naturally. For years, I fought against anger, fear, and doubt. But this only created exhaustion. Now I treat difficult emotions like wild plants. I acknowledge them, learn from them, and guide their energy rather than trying to destroy them. Anger can become compassion. Fear can become wisdom. Doubt can become understanding. As the visitor prepares to leave, he bows deeply. I see now, he says quietly. I have been making life harder than it needs to be. Tenzin nods and returns to the soil. Remember, he says, true perfection lies not in control, but in harmony with the natural wisdom that connects all things. As you rest tonight, consider your own inner garden. Which thoughts have you been trying to uproot? What might happen if you allowed them to exist while guiding them gently? Notice how your body relaxes when you stop fighting your inner experience. Like Tenzin's garden, your mind can find peace through acceptance rather than struggle. Let your awareness drift deeper now, like settling into still water. Imagine yourself walking along a remote forest path in ancient China. Tall pines cast long shadows, and the air carries the scent of moss and earth. A monk named Rioan walks quietly along the trail. His robe is simple, his belongings few. He carries only a small bundle containing a spare robe, a wooden bowl, and a collection of teachings on compassion and wisdom. His steps are unhurried, his face reflecting the calm of years of practice. As evening approaches, Rioan hears footsteps behind him. A rough-looking man emerges from the trees, blocking the path. His clothes are worn, his expression hardened by hardship. In his hand, a knife glints in the fading light. "Stop," the man says harshly. "Give me what you have, or things will end badly." Rioan pauses and looks at him with gentle attention. There is no fear in his eyes and no judgment. "Of course, friend," he says calmly, setting down his bundle. "You may take whatever I carry. But I must tell you, my possessions are very simple." The bandit hesitates, surprised by this response. As Rioan opens his bundle and reveals its contents, confusion replaces aggression. "This is all?" The man asks softly. "Yes," Rioan replies with a quiet smile. "I live simply. Please take whatever you find useful." The bandit studies the monk's face. Instead of fear or anger, he finds kindness. Something within him begins to soften. "What kind of man are you?" he asks. "Aren't you afraid?" Rioan considers his words. "I have learned that what we cling to often becomes the source of suffering. These things serve me, but they do not define me. If they can serve you now, then they belong with you." The bandit lowers his knife. "How will you live without them?" he asks. "In the same way I lived before," Rioan answers gently, "by trusting that each day provides what is truly needed." For a long moment, they stand in silence beneath the trees. "You really mean this?" the bandit asks. "I do," Rioan says softly. And may I ask you something in return? You seem to carry great pain. If it helps, I am willing to listen. The bandit's shoulders sag. His voice trembles as he begins to speak of loss, of grief, of a life broken by tragedy. Rioan listens without interruption, his presence calm and compassionate. Grief can make us feel as though we have lost ourselves, the monk says quietly. Running from pain only deepens it. But when we face it with kindness, something within us begins to heal. As darkness settles over the forest, the two men sit side by side, sharing silence and understanding. When dawn arrives, the bandit makes a decision. Keep your things, he says, returning the bundle. I will choose a different path. Rioan smiles gently. The healing of our own wounds often begins when we help heal the world, he says. As they part ways, the former bandit bows deeply. Thank you, he whispers, for seeing who I truly am. And as you continue to rest, let these stories settle softly within your heart, like leaves drifting onto still water. Rioan bows his head gently and speaks with a quiet smile. Thank you, he says softly, for reminding me that kindness is stronger than fear. Many years later, travelers passing through that region would tell stories of a man who had once lived as a bandit, yet had transformed his life after meeting a wandering monk. True to his promise, he went to the flooded village and devoted himself to rebuilding homes, helping families rise again from loss. People came to know him not as a man of violence, but as a man of tireless compassion and steady hands. As for Rioan, he continued his simple journey, carrying few possessions and an open heart. Wherever he walked, he offered quiet understanding to everyone he met. Through his life, he showed that real safety does not come from what we hold, but from the way we choose to live in each moment. Tonight, as you rest, reflect gently on the places in your own life where you may be holding too tightly, fearing change or loss. Notice how Rioan's willingness to release with love allowed something unexpected and beautiful to arise. Feel your heart slowly opening to the possibility that trust and generosity may offer a deeper sense of security than control ever could. Let your body sink further into ease as you sense the calm that comes from loosening your grip on outcomes. Your breath moves in a slow, steady rhythm, carrying you deeper into stillness. With each exhalation, allow your awareness to drift toward a small tea house beside a mountain stream in Japan, where another quiet lesson in wisdom begins to unfold. The tea house is modest yet graceful. Paper screens soften the morning light into a gentle glow, while the sound of water flowing over stones creates a music that seems to slow time itself. Here, an elderly Zen master named Hazen welcomes seekers who come in search of deeper understanding. On this morning, a university professor arrives to meet him. The professor is known for his brilliant scholarship and his many writings on spiritual traditions. He carries a briefcase filled with notes and carefully prepared questions, ready to engage in profound discussion. He has studied Buddhist texts for years and feels confident in his knowledge, yet senses that something essential remains beyond his grasp. Hazen greets him with a quiet bow and invites him to sit beside a low table. The master's movements are calm and unhurried, contrasting with the professor's restless intellectual energy. Master Hazen, the professor begins, opening his briefcase, I have come to learn authentic Zen teaching. I have read extensively about meditation and enlightenment, yet I feel there are subtleties that can only be understood through direct experience with a true teacher. Hazen nods gently and begins preparing tea. His hands move slowly and attentively as he arranges the cups, heats the water, and measures the leaves. I am especially interested, the professor continues, in the idea of emptiness and its relationship to consciousness. I have studied philosophical texts and compared many traditions, but I would like to hear how emptiness is experienced in actual meditation. Hazen does not reply. His attention remains fully on the tea. When it is ready, he lifts the pot and begins pouring into the professor's cup. The fragrant liquid fills the cup, steam rising softly. Yet Hazen continues pouring even after the cup is full. Tea spills over the rim, running across the table and dripping to the floor. Still, the master pours without hesitation. "Master!" the professor exclaims, rising in alarm. "The cup is full. No more tea can fit." Hazen sets down the pot and looks at him with calm eyes. "Exactly," he says quietly. The professor stares at the overflowing cup, bewildered. "I do not understand," he says. "What does this have to do with my questions?" Hazen gestures toward the spilled tea. "Like this cup," he says gently, "you have come already full. Full of ideas, theories, and expectations. How can anything new enter when there is no space?" The professor feels his mind shift. His training has taught him to interpret every experience through what he already knows. Yet Hazen is pointing towards something entirely different. "Are you saying my knowledge is useless?" the professor asks defensively. "Not useless," Hazen replies softly. "But when the cup is full, it cannot receive fresh water. To understand directly, one must first be willing to empty the cup." Hazen cleans the spilled tea with the same careful attention he showed while preparing it. "Your learning has value," he continues. "But if you wish to experience what these teachings truly point to, you must be willing to set aside what you think you know." The professor watches in silence. Something in Hazen's quiet certainty creates a gentle crack in his confidence. "But how can one empty the cup?" he asks. "I cannot erase everything I have learned." Hazen places an empty cup before him and pours tea again. This time, the cup receives the liquid perfectly. "Emptying the cup does not mean destroying knowledge," he explains. "It means holding it lightly. When you meditate, can you release your expectations? When you hear a teaching, can you listen without immediately comparing it to what you already know?" The professor reflects quietly. "You are saying that expertise can become an obstacle." "Yes," Hazen replies. "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. The empty cup can hold anything. The full cup can receive nothing." Over the following hours, the professor experiences something unfamiliar: the freedom of not knowing. Under Hazen's gentle guidance, he practices simple sitting meditation without analyzing or judging. For the first time in many years, he allows himself to be present without explanation. The relief is profound. As evening arrives, he bows deeply to Hazen. "Thank you," he says quietly. "I see now that my search for wisdom was blocked by my need to grasp it intellectually." Hazen smiles. "The cup is naturally empty," he says. "We only need to remember to pour out what we have accumulated." Years later, when the professor speaks of this encounter, he always recalls the overflowing teacup. "That single moment taught me more about the mind than all my years of study," he says. Sometimes the deepest wisdom comes not from learning more, but from unlearning. As you rest now, consider your own cup. What beliefs or assumptions might you be holding so tightly that they leave no room for new understanding? Feel the quiet relief that comes from setting aside the need to define everything. Tonight, let your mind become like Hazen's empty cup, open, spacious, receptive to the gentle peace that arises when effort dissolves into presence. Feel your body growing heavier as you relax into this spaciousness that is not emptiness, but quiet fullness. This not knowing that holds all wisdom. As our journey continues, notice how these stories have begun to weave themselves into your awareness. The temple bell reminds us of the peaceful nature beneath changing thoughts. The garden teaches acceptance of life as it unfolds. The encounter with the bandit reveals the transforming power of compassion. The empty cup shows that true understanding begins when we release what we think we know. These stories now live within you, not as memories, but as seeds waiting to bloom in their own time. Your breathing slows further as you drift closer to sleep, carried by the gentle current of ancient wisdom. In the next part of our journey, we explore the art of letting go, discovering that freedom comes not from grasping what we desire, but from releasing our rigid ideas of how life should be. Teachings on impermanence and non-attachment guide us deeper into rest and clarity. Feel your body settling even more comfortably. The soil of awareness has been prepared by these stories, and now we turn toward one of Buddhism's most liberating insights, the wisdom of release. As your breath becomes slower and softer, you begin to see how attachment creates suffering and how letting go opens the door to freedom. These teachings do not ask you to care less, but to love more freely, without the tight grip that turns joy into fear. Let the gentle wisdom of these stories flow through you like a warm stream, washing away the tension and grasping that may have gathered in your heart. Imagine yourself walking through the lively streets of an ancient Tibetan trading town. Merchants from distant lands gather to exchange goods and stories. The air carries the scent of incense, tea, leather, and dust from long journeys. Among them is a wealthy trader named Tenzin. His caravans travel far across the silk routes, and his warehouses overflow with precious goods. By worldly standards, he has achieved success and security. Yet beneath his prosperity, something uneasy stirs. His eyes constantly scan his belongings. His shoulders carry a tension that never fully releases. The success he once dreamed of has become a heavy burden. One evening, after a profitable day, Tenzin sits alone counting gold coins. Their soft sound usually brings satisfaction, but tonight he feels only anxiety. Unable to sleep, he walks through the quiet town until he reaches a small monastery on a hillside. Through an open window, he hears the voice of an old teacher named Jamyang speaking to students. Curious, he listens. "Please join us," Jamyang says warmly when he notices the merchant. "We are speaking about the nature of true wealth." Tenzin sits quietly among the group as Jamyang begins a story. "Imagine a man who finds a beautiful golden chain," the teacher says. "It shines brilliantly, and he wears it with pride. Yet he does not realize that the chain is also woven with invisible links of worry." Tenzin shifts uneasily as the story continues. The man becomes obsessed with protecting his chain. He cannot sleep peacefully. He cannot travel freely. His mind is always bound to his possession. A student asks, "But teacher, is the chain not valuable?" Jamyang nods. "The chain itself is neither good nor bad. The problem is not having the chain, but being possessed by it. When our treasures become our masters, they turn into prisons. Tenzin feels his heart quicken. After the teaching, he approaches Jamyang privately. "I fear your words describe my life," he says quietly. "I have worked for many years to build wealth, yet now my possessions seem to control me. How can I find freedom without abandoning responsibility?" Jamyang looks at him with compassion. "Tell me," he asks gently, "what happens when you hold water too tightly in your hands?" "It slips away," Tenzin answers. "And if you hold it too loosely?" "It also slips away." "But if you hold it with balance," Jamyang says softly, "the water remains and can be shared." This is the wisdom of non-attachment. In the weeks that follow, Tenzin studies meditation and the teachings of impermanence. Slowly, he learns that letting go does not mean losing everything. It means enjoying what he has without being enslaved by it. He begins sharing his wealth more generously, conducting business with fairness, and valuing integrity over accumulation. To his surprise, his prosperity does not diminish. It deepens. More importantly, he rediscovers the joy of simple moments he had forgotten. Months later, as he sits beneath the stars with Jamyang, he speaks with quiet clarity. "I see now that the golden chain was never the problem," he says. "My fear of losing it was. Now I wear my wealth lightly, like a garment that does not bind." Jamyang nods. "This is the freedom that arises when we understand change," he says. Years later, Tenzin becomes known not only as a successful trader, but as a man of wisdom. He tells young merchants that true freedom comes from holding even the greatest treasures with open hands. Tonight, as you rest, reflect on your own golden chains. What are you holding so tightly that they have become sources of worry instead of joy? Feel the gentle relief of imagining holding them more lightly, with trust rather than fear. Your breathing deepens as your body relaxes further. Like water flowing through open hands, life moves naturally when we release our grasp. And now, as your awareness drifts deeper into stillness, imagine a small tea house once more, where an elderly Zen master named Riku prepares tea in quiet mindfulness, continuing the gentle rhythm of wisdom that carries you softly toward sleep. The room is simple yet quietly luminous. Paper screens soften the daylight into a gentle glow, and a single calligraphy scroll hangs in the alcove, breathing silence into the space. On a wooden shelf rests Riku's most cherished object, a tea bowl passed down through generations of his family. The bowl is neither ornate nor dazzling. Its beauty lies in balance and subtlety, in a glaze that echoes the colors of late autumn. It has accompanied Riku through every season of his life. From this bowl he drank tea as a young novice, shared countless moments of reflection, and welcomed visitors with humble warmth. Over time, it became more than an object. It became a quiet companion, a witness to decades of mindful living. Today, Riku's young apprentice, Kuji, watches as the master prepares tea with calm precision. Each movement is deliberate yet effortless, shaped by years of practice that have transformed complexity into simplicity. As Riku lifts the beloved bowl filled with tea, his hands tremble slightly. Age has begun to loosen the steadiness that once guided them. In a single quiet moment, the bowl slips from his fingers and falls to the wooden floor. The sound is soft, yet final. Kuji gasps and rushes forward, expecting sorrow, perhaps anger. The bowl lies in fragments, its long history seemingly ended in an instant. But when Kuji looks at his teacher's face, he sees something unexpected. There is no grief, no regret. Instead, Riku's expression holds a quiet wonder, as though he were witnessing something rare and beautiful. Riku kneels beside the broken pieces, lifting each fragment with the same care he once gave the whole bowl. His fingers trace the edges of the cracks, and slowly, a gentle smile appears. "Master," Kuji says softly, "I am so sorry. That bowl was precious." Riku looks up with eyes filled with quiet joy. "Come and sit with me," he says. "Let us listen to what this broken bowl has just taught." Kuji sits beside him as Riku arranges the fragments carefully on the floor. "For many years," Riku begins, his voice calm and reflective, "I believed I understood this bowl. I loved its beauty and honored its history. Yet today I realized that I knew only half its truth. I understood its wholeness, but not its breaking. I understood its permanence, but not its change." Kuji frowns gently. "But Master, surely the bowl was more beautiful when it was whole." Riku laughs softly, without sadness. "Tell me, what do you see now?" "I see something that was beautiful and is now destroyed," Kuji answers. "Look again," Riku says gently. "Not with memory, but with fresh eyes." Kuji studies the fragments more closely. Slowly, his vision changes. Light touches the broken edges in new ways. Each piece reveals its own shape, its own quiet beauty. "I see," he says slowly. "Each fragment has its own character. It is different, but not without beauty." Riku nods. "And what else?" "The bowl was always changing," Kuji realizes. "Every use, every touch was slowly transforming it. I simply could not see the change." "Yes," Riku replies. "Impermanence has been teaching us every day. The breaking only made the lesson visible." He gathers the pieces gently and places them in a wooden box. "For many years, I feared losing this bowl without knowing it. Each time I lifted it, part of my mind worried. Now that the bowl is gone, the fear is gone as well. Instead of loss, I feel freedom." Kuji begins to understand. So the breaking was not tragedy, but completion. "Everything in this world has the nature of change," Riku says softly. "When we cling to what cannot remain, we create suffering. When we learn to see beauty in every phase of existence, even in endings, we discover peace." Riku prepares tea again, this time using a simple bowl. His movements feel lighter, freer. "Will you miss the old bowl?" Kuji asks. "I am grateful for every moment it shared with me," Riku replies. "It taught me mindfulness for many years, and in one moment it taught me letting go. How could I ask for a greater teacher?" Later, Kuji asks whether the bowl will be repaired. "Perhaps," Riku says thoughtfully. "If I restore it with gold, it will not be to reclaim the past, but to honor transformation." Years later, visitors admire the bowl traced with golden seams and listen to Riku's story. "That bowl," he always says gently, "was never more beautiful than in the moment it changed." As you rest tonight, consider what precious things you may be holding with fear rather than gratitude. Notice how the fear of loss can quietly diminish joy. Feel the lightness that comes from appreciating what is present without needing to grasp it forever. Let your breath slow as you imagine holding your treasures as Riku held his bowl, with appreciation, acceptance of change, and openness to beauty and transformation. Now allow your awareness to drift further, like sinking into warm water. Imagine a quiet farming village nestled among gentle hills. The people here live in rhythm with the seasons, planting and harvesting with patience and care. Among them is a farmer named Chen, whose rice fields have sustained his family for many years. He is known for his dedication and skill in reading the subtle signs of nature. Yet this year, something unusual happens. The rains that normally arrive with certainty do not come. At first, Chen responds with effort and determination. He carries water from distant streams, adjusts his planting methods, and studies the sky each day. As weeks pass, his anxiety grows. He works from before dawn until nightfall, trying to force the earth to respond to his will. His wife watches him grow thinner, his mind consumed by worry. While some farmers struggle and others despair, an elderly man named Lao Jiang responds differently. He does what is necessary in the mornings, yet in the afternoons he sits quietly beneath an old tree, observing the sky with calm attention. Chen finds this behavior difficult to understand. One evening, exhausted and frustrated, Chen confronts him. "How can you sit so peacefully when our crops are dying?" he asks. Lao Jiang smiles gently. "Sit with me for a moment," he says. "Let me share something I learned long ago." From beneath the tree, Chen sees his own struggling fields and Lao Jiang's surprisingly resilient crops. Lao Jiang speaks of a drought in his youth and how he once fought it with anger and desperation. He tells of a monk who taught him to work with circumstances rather than against them. Slowly, Chen begins to see that his struggle itself has been deepening his suffering. Over time, he changes his approach. He still works hard, but with clarity rather than fear. He adapts instead of resisting, cooperates instead of isolating himself. When the rains finally return, his harvest is smaller than usual, yet his family is safe and his spirit stronger. He has learned that wisdom lies in accepting what cannot be changed while skillfully transforming what can. Tonight, as you rest, consider the droughts in your own life. Notice how fighting what cannot be controlled can create additional pain. Feel your body soften as you imagine flowing like water around obstacles instead of colliding with them. And now, as your awareness drifts even deeper into quiet rest, let your mind travel to a vast library in ancient China, where scrolls and books hold centuries of wisdom. Among towering shelves lives a scholar named Wei, devoted entirely to knowledge. His reputation for learning spreads throughout the kingdom, yet his love for books slowly turns into fear and attachment. One day, a fire begins to rise in the district where his library stands. The fire raged through the narrow streets, leaping from roof to roof as if carried by an unseen wind. Though the villagers and monks worked tirelessly to contain it, the flames moved faster than human hands could follow. Wei stood at a distance, his breath trembling, his eyes fixed on the place that had once been his sanctuary. Within moments, the library that had shaped his entire life was reduced to smoke, sparks, and falling embers. The scrolls he had collected across decades, the books he had guarded like living companions, the words he had memorized, cherished, and protected, all vanished into the night. When the fire finally subsided, nothing remained but blackened beams and scattered ashes. Only a few books survived, those he had happened to carry away before the flames reached the hall. 30 years of devotion disappeared in a single afternoon. Those around him expected grief, collapse, despair. And indeed, at first, Wei felt stunned, as though the ground beneath his identity had crumbled. Yet as the days passed, a strange and unexpected feeling began to emerge. It was not sorrow alone. It was not anger. It was something lighter. One evening, as Wei wandered quietly through the ruins, he encountered an elderly monk sitting calmly among the ashes. The monk's robe was simple, his posture still, his presence gentle. His name was Huineng. Wei sat beside him in silence for a long moment, listening to the faint sound of wind moving through broken beams. "Master," Wei said softly, "I should feel destroyed by what I have lost. Yet within me, there is an unfamiliar sense of freedom. Does this mean I never truly loved my books? Was my life of study empty?" Huineng looked at him with eyes that reflected neither judgment nor pity. "Tell me," the monk said quietly, "how did your relationship with your books change over time?" Wei closed his eyes and searched his memory. "In the beginning," he said slowly, "I loved them with innocence. Each book felt like a doorway into a vast landscape of understanding. Each scroll was a conversation with minds long gone. Learning felt endless, joyful, alive. But gradually, something shifted. I began to feel that the books belonged to me. I feared losing them. I hesitated to share them. Instead of opening my mind, they began to surround it. What once felt like freedom became obligation. What once felt like discovery became possession. And without realizing it, I became a prisoner of what I loved." The monk nodded gently. "The fire did not destroy your learning," Huineng said. "It revealed the difference between wisdom and accumulation." Wei looked down at his hands, then up at the darkened sky. "The knowledge I have truly absorbed remains," he said. "My understanding, my ability to think, to guide others, none of that burned away. What vanished was something else." He paused, as if tasting the realization for the first time. The burden of ownership, the fear of loss, the pride of possession, the illusion that my worth depended on what I controlled. Huineng smiled faintly. "Books," he said, "are like fingers pointing toward the moon. They are useful only when they guide our gaze beyond themselves. But when we become fascinated with the fingers and forget the moon, they cease to serve wisdom." In the months that followed, Wei did not attempt to rebuild his vast collection. Instead, he rebuilt something quieter and deeper. He began teaching students with patience and openness. He wrote from memory rather than from fear of forgetting. He shared ideas freely instead of guarding them. To his surprise, knowledge multiplied when it was given away. Each student became a living vessel of wisdom. Each conversation became a bridge between minds. No fire could destroy what existed in understanding rather than in objects. Freed from the need to possess texts, Wei discovered a new clarity. Ideas flowed more naturally. Connections appeared where rigid systems once blocked them. Creativity replaced anxiety. When visitors asked about his transformation, Wei would lead them to the place where his library had once stood. There, a garden now bloomed, flowers rising where shelves had once gathered dust. "The greatest treasures," he would say softly, "are those that cannot be burned, stolen, or owned." True knowledge does not live in books we collect, but in wisdom we embody. Real learning is not accumulation, but transformation. Children played among the flowers as he spoke, their laughter drifting through the air. "The fire took my collection," Wei would continue, "but it returned my purpose. Not to hoard wisdom, but to cultivate it. Not to own knowledge, but to serve it." Years later, People no longer remembered Wei as the scholar who lost a library. They remembered him as the teacher whose insights seemed inexhaustible, flowing from a quiet inner source. Tonight, as you rest, allow yourself to reflect gently. What in your life might you be holding too tightly? What abilities, achievements, or identities have you grasped as possessions rather than gifts? Can you sense the softness that arises when you loosen your grip? Feel your breath slowing as you imagine wisdom flowing freely within you, shared without fear, received without pride. Let your mind become a spacious library where ideas move like light, where learning is joyful rather than burdensome, where understanding grows through generosity rather than control. As these reflections settle within you, notice how your body grows heavier, how layers of tension quietly dissolve. Letting go is not about caring less. It is about loving without fear. As your breathing deepens, you begin to sense a deeper truth that beyond attachment lies connection, and beyond possession lies compassion. Tonight, we move gently toward the heart of Buddhist wisdom, where the boundaries between self and others begin to soften. The teachings of non-attachment have prepared the ground. Now compassion begins to arise naturally, not as something you must force, but as something that flows when nothing blocks it. Feel your awareness drifting deeper, like a leaf carried by a slow current. Imagine yourself walking beside a quiet river in ancient India. Morning light shimmers across still water. Lotus flowers open silently in hidden corners. Here walks a monk named Ananda. He is known not for brilliance or mystical power, but for kindness so steady that even strangers feel safe in his presence. Children follow him through narrow village paths. Merchants trust him instinctively. Animals approach without fear. One morning, as Ananda settles beneath a banyan tree for meditation, he hears a faint splashing sound near the riverbank. Turning his gaze, he sees a small creature struggling in the current. A scorpion has fallen into the water. Its tiny legs move frantically, fighting against the flow. Without hesitation, Ananda steps into the shallow river. He reaches out gently to lift the creature to safety. The scorpion stings him. Pain flashes across his palm. Startled, he withdraws his hand, and the scorpion falls back into the water. Ananda looks at his swelling hand, yet his expression remains calm. He reaches out again. Once more, the scorpion stings him, and once more it slips back into the current. By now, villagers have gathered along the bank, watching in confusion. A merchant steps forward, his voice edged with irritation. "Monk," he calls, "why do you keep trying to save that creature? It only hurts you. Let it drown and spare yourself the pain." Ananda pauses, water flowing quietly around his legs. "The scorpion acts according to its nature," he replies softly. "Should I abandon mine?" He bends down again, this time using a broad leaf to shield his hand, and gently lifts the scorpion onto dry land. The small creature crawls away, exhausted but alive. The merchant stares at Ananda in disbelief. "That creature showed no gratitude," he says. "How can this be wisdom?" Ananda sits beneath the banyan tree, cradling his injured hands with tenderness. "Tell me," he asks gently, "if a frightened child were drowning in this river, would you save her?" "Of course," the merchant answers without hesitation. "And if she scratched or bit you in fear, would you throw her back into the water?" The merchant shakes his head. "Then you already understand," Ananda says quietly. The scorpion was no different from the frightened child. It acted from fear, not malice. Compassion does not depend on gratitude. It flows from our nature when we choose not to close our hearts. A young man steps forward from the crowd. But surely, he asks, there are people so harmful that they do not deserve compassion. Ananda looks at his swollen hands, then at the young man. Most harmful actions arise from fear, pain, or confusion, he says. When people hurt others, they are often searching blindly for safety or love. Compassion does not mean allowing harm. Sometimes it means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means stopping harmful actions. But even then, we can act without hatred. The villagers listen in silence. Compassion, Ananda continues, is not weakness. It is the strength to remain true to our deepest nature, even when others act from fear. As the crowd slowly disperses, the young man remains beside the monk. "Master," he asks softly, "how do you sustain such compassion? Does your heart never grow tired?" Ananda gazes toward the river. "I once believed compassion was limited," he says, "like coins that would run out if spent too freely. But I discovered something else. Compassion is like this river. The more it flows, the more it flows." He rises slowly, his pain no longer visible. "Each time I choose kindness over resentment, my heart becomes larger, not smaller." True compassion does not depend on how others respond. It arises when we remove the barriers within ourselves. Years later, people still tell the story of Ananda and the scorpion. They remember not the sting, but the serenity on the monk's face. They learn that compassion is not softness, but courage. Tonight, as you rest, consider where in your life you may have closed your heart. Where have you withheld kindness because others did not respond as you hoped? Feel how gently your chest expands as you imagine your heart widening, like a river that flows without fear of running dry. Let your breath deepen. Compassion is not diminished by giving. It grows. Your awareness drifts further, like sinking into warm water. Now imagine a remote mountain village, where old resentments have shaped relationships for generations. Here, grudges have hardened into tradition, and neighbors walk past each other with silent hostility. Into this divided village arrives a wandering monk named Tik Min. He comes not with arguments or judgments, but with quiet presence. The villagers distrust him. Each side assumes he must belong to the other. Instead of addressing the conflict directly, Tik Min walks to the village well. The well is old. It has served every family for centuries. Silently, he begins to clean it. He removes debris. He scrubs the stones. He repairs the worn mechanisms. Villagers watch from a distance, suspicious yet curious. As he works, Tik Min begins to speak, not to any group, but to the air, the mountains, the ancient stones. "This well," he says softly, "has served every family without preference. It remembers no quarrels. It chooses no sides. It offers water to anyone who approaches with need." Slowly, people from both sides draw closer, pretending to fetch water, yet listening with quiet attention. And as the monk's words flow through the valley, something subtle begins to shift. "I often wonder," Tik Min says softly, his hands still moving with quiet care, "what this well is teaching us about nourishment." He pauses, letting the sound of flowing water fill the silence. The water drawn from this place becomes part of every person in this village. It enters the bodies of those who call themselves friends and those who call themselves enemies. The same water that flows through your veins also flows through the veins of those you distrust. He lifts his gaze slowly. How can we truly be separated when we are shaped by the same source? From the edge of the gathering, an elderly man speaks with a rough voice. "Beautiful words," he mutters. "Easy to speak when you have not lived our history. You have not tasted the betrayals we endured." Tik Min looks at him without resistance, without argument, without defensiveness. "You are right, grandfather," he replies gently. "I do not know your history, and I would never claim that your pain is unreal." He bows his head slightly. "Will you teach me about it?" The old man is startled by the question. His anger finds no opponent. Instead of arguing, he begins to speak. He tells of sheep stolen decades ago, of accusations ignored, of humiliation before the entire village. As his story unfolds, others begin to speak. Some agree with him. Some challenge him. Some add memories of their own. Soon, people from both sides gather around the well, voices rising, overlapping, trembling with emotion. Tik Min listens. He does not interrupt. He does not judge. He does not decide who is right or wrong. He listens the way he cleaned the well, patiently, carefully, with equal respect for every voice. When the noise finally fades, he remains silent for a long while, allowing stillness to settle like dust after a storm. "I hear so much pain," he says at last. "Pain of being misunderstood, pain of losing trust, pain of feeling betrayed." He looks around the circle. "And I notice something else. Though your stories differ, your pain sounds remarkably similar." A woman from the opposite faction speaks sharply. "How can you say that? They caused everything. They have brought us suffering for 30 years. Tik Min nods gently. "I am not saying your experiences are identical," he replies. "I am saying that the feeling of being wronged, the ache of mistrust, the loneliness of not being understood, these feelings are shared by all of you." He gestures toward the well. "Just as you share the same water, you share the same human needs. To be seen, to be treated fairly, to live in peace. These needs do not disappear in conflict," he continues quietly. "They become even stronger." In the days that follow, Tik Min continues his quiet work. He repairs the bridge that everyone must cross. He clears paths used by travelers from both sides. He cares for sick children without asking which family they belong to. As he works, he speaks, not as a teacher delivering lessons, but as a human being sharing simple observations about life, about suffering, about the possibility of healing. Slowly, the atmosphere of the village begins to change. People notice how much energy they have spent protecting their own side, while neglecting what could benefit everyone. Children, drawn by the monk's gentle presence, begin playing together across old boundaries. The turning point arrives when a late storm damages homes on both sides of the divide. In the past, each faction would have helped only its own members. But this time, something different happens. An elder quietly begins repairing the roof of a house that once belonged to his enemies. A woman who has avoided her neighbor for 15 years offers food while the neighbor's kitchen is rebuilt. Small acts spread outward, like ripples on still water. Soon, the lines between us and them begin to blur. People help whoever needs help, not because of loyalty, but because of shared humanity. When the repairs are complete, the village feels different. Not perfect, not free from memory, but softer. Before leaving, Tik-min gathers everyone beside the well. I do not believe that 1 month can erase 30 years of pain, he says gently. Deep wounds heal slowly. They require patience, courage, and honesty. He looks around the circle. But I have seen something important. You did not lose your ability to care for one another. It was only hidden. He draws water from the well and offers cups to the people. This water does not remember your conflicts, he says. It does not choose sides. It simply gives life. One by one, villagers drink the water. Some share cups with neighbors they once feared. Years later, travelers passing through the village often notice its unusual harmony. Not the silence of suppressed conflict, but the quiet cooperation of people who have learned to live together despite differences. When asked how this change began, the villagers always speak of the monk who cleaned their well and taught them to see what they had never truly lost. Tonight, as you rest, consider the wells you share with those who seem different from you. The same longing for understanding, the same desire for safety, the same wish for love and meaning. Feel how gently your breath slows as you sense how much connects you with others. What divides us often appears large, yet what unites us is deeper. As your awareness drifts further into rest, your mind travels now to a quiet farming village where a young mother named Kisa faces unbearable loss. The morning began like any other. Her small son played among flowers while she prepared simple meals. By afternoon, the child lay still in her arms, taken by a sudden fever no remedy could ease. Kisa's grief is vast and overwhelming. She clings to her child's body, unable to accept that his laughter has vanished, that his hands will never again reach for hers. Neighbors gather around her, offering words that cannot reach her heart. Soon, she hears of a great teacher nearby, a man known for wisdom and compassion. Desperate, she wraps her child in cloth and begins the journey to find him, carrying hope like a fragile flame. She finds the Buddha seated beneath mango trees, surrounded by disciples and villagers. The crowd parts silently as Kisa approaches. She kneels before him, laying her child's body at his feet. "Master," she pleads through tears, "they say you have great power. Please bring my child back to life. Without him, I cannot go on." The Buddha looks at her with boundless compassion, seeing not only her grief, but the grief of all parents across time. "Dear woman," he says gently, "I will help you. But first, bring me a handful of mustard seeds." Kisa's heart lifts. "But," the Buddha continues softly, "you must obtain them from a household where no one has ever died." Through tears, Kisa nods eagerly. She believes her miracle is close. She enters the village and knocks on the first door. "I need mustard seeds," she says, "from a home where death has never visited." The woman who answers smiles sadly. "I would gladly help," she says, "but my father died last year. And before that, we lost my mother-in-law." Kisa thanks her and moves on. At each house, she hears similar stories. A daughter lost in childbirth. A grandfather taken by age. A young father lost in an accident. Every household offers seeds, but none can meet the Buddha's condition. As the day passes, something within Kisa begins to change. She listens more deeply to the stories people share. She sees that her pain, though unique in detail, is universal in essence. Every family has faced loss. Every parent has felt fear and grief. Yet she also notices something else. Despite their sorrow, people continue to live. They continue to love. They continue to find moments of joy. Their hearts have been broken, but not closed. As evening falls, Kisa returns to the Buddha. Her hope for a miracle has transformed into quiet understanding. "Master," she says softly, "I could not find a single household untouched by death. Every family has known loss." The Buddha nods. "And what have you learned?" Kisa looks at her child's peaceful face. "I see that my suffering is not mine alone," she says slowly. "I believed I was isolated in pain, but now I understand that grief belongs to every loving heart." Her tears flow differently now, still sorrowful, yet touched by acceptance. "My son's death is not a punishment," she continues. "It is part of the impermanence that touches all life." The Buddha places a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You have understood deeply," he says. "Your grief is natural. But love itself does not die when forms change." He looks into her eyes. "The love you feel for your child remains within you. Through you, it can flow to others who need care, understanding, and compassion." In the days that follow, Kisa slowly transforms. Her heart remains wounded, yet no longer consumed by resistance. She begins to help other parents, offering comfort that comes not from words, but from shared experience. Her loss becomes a source of wisdom. Over time, she becomes known as someone who understands both joy and sorrow deeply. When asked about her transformation, she always speaks of the mustard seeds. "My healing did not come from reversing loss," she says. "It came from understanding its meaning. My grief became a bridge, not a prison." Tonight, as you rest, consider how your own wounds might become bridges of understanding. Feel your breath slowing as you sense that no one suffers alone. Every broken heart belongs to a vast community of love. As these stories settle within you, notice how gently your body grows heavier, how separation begins to soften. Compassion is not something we force. It arises naturally when we recognize our deep connection. As we move toward the next stage of our journey, we turn toward awakening. The realization that peace is not something to achieve, but something to remember. Feel your awareness drifting like mist through ancient forests. Sunlight filters through tall trees. In these mountains lives a simple woodcutter named Hick. For many years, his life followed the same rhythms. But recently, something within him has begun to stir. A quiet restlessness, a sense that life holds a deeper meaning. One morning, deep within the forest, he encounters an old monk sitting in meditation beneath a great pine tree. The monk's stillness is so complete that Hick almost passes without noticing him. Yet something in that silence calls him to stop. He had walked through silent forests before, yet this silence felt different. It was not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of something deep and alive. The monk seemed to embody the quiet Hick had been searching for without knowing it. Hick gently placed his axe on the ground and stepped closer, careful not to disturb the stillness. When the monk slowly opened his eyes, they reflected a clarity that seemed to reach beyond appearances. "Venerable sir," Hick said softly, his voice hesitant, "I do not wish to interrupt your practice, but I feel compelled to ask something. For many years I have lived in these mountains, believing that life was simple, honest work, modest living, and caring for what is necessary. Yet lately, I feel as though something essential is missing, something I cannot name." The monk, whose name was Sankan, regarded him with gentle attentiveness. "What do you believe is missing?" he asked quietly. "I cannot say with certainty," Quick replied. "Perhaps peace, or meaning, or a deeper understanding of what life truly is. When I see you sitting here, I sense a completeness I do not feel within myself, a quiet satisfaction beyond comfort." Sankan nodded slowly. "And where do you imagine such peace might be found?" Quick reflected carefully. "Perhaps in study, or in meditation, or in living more virtuously. I have heard of masters who spend decades learning sacred texts and practicing contemplation. Maybe I should abandon this simple life and pursue the spiritual path." Before he could continue, Sankan gently interrupted. "Before abandoning anything, show me your restless mind. Point to the place where it resides." Quick paused, surprised by the question. He turned inward, searching for the troubled mind he had assumed existed. "I feel something unsettled," he said slowly, "a longing to understand." "Yes," the monk replied, "but where is this unrest located? Is it in your chest, your head, your hands that hold the axe?" Quick searched more deeply. "When I look closely," he admitted, "I cannot grasp it. It is like trying to hold mist in my hands." Sankan smiled faintly. "If you cannot find this troubled mind, then what exactly needs to be repaired?" Quick sat quietly for a long time. The question touched something deeper than any teaching he had expected. "Are you saying that the problem I believe I have does not truly exist?" "I am inviting you to examine your assumptions," Sankan replied. "You came believing that you lacked peace or purpose. But when asked to show what is lacking, can you find it?" Quick continued his inner search, and something unexpected began to happen. The more he looked for what was wrong, the less solid his dissatisfaction became. "It is strange," he said softly. "When I am not looking for what is missing, I feel its absence strongly. But when I try to locate it, it seems to dissolve." "And in this very moment," Sankan asked, "what is your experience?" Quick turned his attention fully to the present moment. "I feel the warmth of sunlight on my face. I hear the wind moving through the pine needles. I sense the firmness of the earth beneath my feet. My breath is calm, my body relaxed. There is an awareness here that feels surprisingly peaceful." Sankan nodded gently. "This awareness that notices sunlight, wind, and earth, is it troubled? Does it lack anything?" Something began to awaken in Quick's understanding, like dawn slowly revealing a landscape that had always been there. "The awareness itself feels complete," he whispered. "It is not searching. It is simply present." "This natural awareness," Sankan said softly, "is what you have been seeking through distant teachers and complex practices. This is what the Buddha called our original nature, not something to be created, but something to be recognized." Quick felt a shift so subtle and profound that he could scarcely believe it. "You mean the peace I was searching for has been here all along?" Sankan chuckled quietly. "Exactly. You were like someone searching everywhere for glasses that were already resting on your nose. Buddha nature is not something foreign to you. It is the very awareness through which you see the forest, hear the birds, and feel your own life." "Then why did I feel so restless?" Quick asked. "Because you identified with passing thoughts and emotions rather than resting as awareness itself," the monk replied. "It is like mistaking clouds for the sky, or waves for the ocean. Clouds move, yet the sky remains clear. Waves rise and fall, yet the ocean is undisturbed. As this understanding settled, Huick noticed a subtle change in his perception. The trees were still trees. The work of cutting wood was still work. Yet beneath everything flowed a quiet presence he had never noticed before. So I do not need to abandon my life and become a monk? Sankan shook his head gently. Buddha nature expresses itself through honest labor as easily as through meditation. Whether cutting wood or sitting in silence, the same awakened awareness is present. Huick listened quietly. It feels almost too simple, he said. The most profound truths often are, the monk replied. We complicate them because we believe something so close could not possibly be what we seek. In the days that followed, Huick returned to his work with a new quality of attention. Each swing of the axe, each step on the forest path, each moment of rest became a form of quiet meditation. The labor did not grow easier, but it no longer felt empty. The peace he had sought revealed itself not as something to be attained, but as the natural state of awareness when it stops searching. Weeks later, when Huick met Sankan again, the monk noticed the change immediately. "How is your practice?" he asked. Huick smiled softly. "I am beginning to understand that. I do not have a practice. I have a life, and awareness is present in every part of it. Sometimes it seems clouded by worry, but the awareness itself is never disturbed." "And your search for what was missing?" "I see now that I was like a fish searching for water," Huick replied. "The awareness that felt dissatisfied was itself the peace I sought. I only needed to recognize what was already here." Years later, people in the mountain villages began to notice something different about the humble woodcutter. His work remained the same, yet his presence brought quiet calm to others. Children felt safe around him. Troubled adults found peace in his words. When asked about his transformation, Huick always pointed people back to their own experience. "Look for what is looking," he would say softly. "The mind that seeks awakening is already awake. It only needs to stop searching long enough to recognize itself." Tonight, as you rest in deepening stillness, turn gently toward the awareness that hears these words, that feels your breath, that knows your body settling into sleep. This awareness is not an idea. It is your most intimate experience, what the teachings call Buddha nature. Can you sense how it is naturally peaceful, naturally complete? Like Huick, you may discover that what you have been seeking has never been absent. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink deeper into comfort. And as your awareness drifts softly into rest, it travels now toward another quiet place, where the rhythm of simple human lives reveals yet another gentle teaching of awakening. The one who tastes cannot be found apart from the act of tasting itself. There is no separate observer standing outside the experience. "Yes," the old woman said softly, her hands moving with unhurried grace. "And this awareness that knows the taste without being different from it, this is what moves when I pour tea, when you drink it, when birds sing in the trees beyond this stall. There is no Buddha nature hidden somewhere else, apart from the living flow of consciousness." As she spoke, she refilled his cup with the same quiet care she had shown from the beginning. "You ask how I know I have realized Buddha nature," she continued gently. "But this question already assumes that Buddha nature is something to possess or attain. Yet Buddha nature is what asks the question, what hears the answer, what understands or does not understand. A young disciple, still struggling with these words, spoke with honest confusion. Then why do we meditate? Why study scriptures? Why practice at all, if Buddha nature is already present? Dongshan smiled kindly. Practice can calm the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities, he replied. But the most essential practice is not acquiring something new. It is recognizing what has always been here. The old woman wiped the table slowly, her movements gentle and precise. When you meditate, what is meditating? When you study, what is understanding? When you search for Buddha nature, what is doing the searching? She paused, letting silence settle like dust after wind. The very capacity that practices, studies, and seeks, this is the Buddha nature you are looking for. Dongshan sat quietly, realizing that his intention to test her had turned into receiving a teaching deeper than he expected. You speak of Buddha nature as if it were ordinary, he said softly. It is ordinary, she replied with a faint smile. So ordinary that we overlook it while searching for something rare or extraordinary. It is like wearing glasses while desperately looking for them. The very thing that makes seeking possible is what we are seeking. As the afternoon unfolded, travelers came and went. Dongshan watched how the old woman responded to each person. She challenged the proud without harshness, comforted the sorrowful without sentimentality, listened patiently to the lonely, and offered simple guidance to the confused. Nothing in her manner seemed calculated. Her responses arose naturally, as though shaped by an invisible intelligence that knew exactly what each moment required. Dongshan felt he was witnessing Buddha nature not as theory, but as living wisdom flowing through ordinary life. When it was time to leave, he bowed deeply to the old woman. His disciples watched in surprise, for they had never seen their master bow to a layperson. "Thank you for this teaching," he said sincerely. "You have shown me that realization is not about attaining special states or collecting spiritual knowledge. It is about recognizing the awareness that is always present, always responding, always complete." The old woman bowed in return. "You honor me, Master," she said gently. "But remember, the Buddha nature that received this teaching is the same Buddha nature that offered it. There is only one awareness expressing itself as teacher and student, question and answer, seeking and finding." Years later, when students asked Dongshan about the most profound teaching he had ever received, he often told the story of the humble tea stall. "She taught me that enlightenment is not somewhere else," he would say. "It is the natural functioning of awareness in every moment. Sometimes clear, sometimes clouded, yet always present, always whole." He would smile quietly. The most extraordinary realization is seeing the complete ordinariness of what we truly are. Buddha nature pours tea, washes dishes, listens to stories, and answers questions with the same simple presence. It is not what you might become. It is what you already are. Tonight, as you rest in deepening stillness, notice the awareness that hears these words, that feels the rhythm of your breath, that senses your body settling gently into sleep. This quiet knowing is your Buddha nature, not mystical, not distant, but the most intimate aspect of your being. Like the old woman serving tea with full presence, you may recognize that whatever you are experiencing right now is Buddha nature expressing itself as your life. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to become, only the gentle recognition of what has always been here. Let your breathing soften. Let your body grow heavier, and as your awareness drifts into deeper rest, it travels now toward a bustling trading city, where merchants from distant lands gather to exchange goods and stories. Among them lives a prosperous trader named Vimalata. Through careful planning and sharp judgment, his wealth has steadily grown. Yet beneath his success, something within him feels unsettled. For many months, strange dreams have visited him at night. In these dreams, he is no longer a wealthy merchant. Sometimes he becomes a farmer watching his crops wither beneath an unrelenting sun. Sometimes a sick beggar trembling on a cold street. Sometimes a grieving mother holding a child she cannot save. Sometimes even an animal fleeing from unseen danger. Each dream feels vivid and real. He feels the farmer's despair, the beggar's humiliation, the mother's heartbreak. When he awakens, it takes time to remember who he is, the successful merchant whose life appears stable and secure. Gradually, the dreams begin to change his waking days. He finds himself wondering about the inner lives of those around him, the laborers who carry his goods, the servants in his household, the animals that transport his merchandise. Once he had seen them as parts of a system. Now he wonders what fears and hopes they carry within their hearts. Disturbed by these dreams, Vimalata seeks a wise teacher known for understanding the deeper meanings of such experiences. The teacher, an elderly monk named Asana, listens quietly as Vimalata describes his visions. "Master," the merchant says softly, "these dreams feel more real than my waking life. Sometimes I wonder which identity is truly mine, the merchant I am during the day, or the suffering beings I become at night." Asana reflects for a moment. "Tell me," he asks gently, "when you are dreaming, do you doubt that you are the farmer or the beggar? Or do those experiences feel completely real?" "They feel entirely real," Vimalata replies. "When I am the farmer, I know without doubt that farming is my life. When I am the beggar, I feel certain that this is my reality." "And when you wake as the merchant," Asana asks, "which identity feels more true?" Vimalata pauses. "At first, the merchant feels more real because it is familiar and continuous. But as I remember the intensity of the dreams, I begin to wonder if they reveal something deeper than my ordinary understanding. What if both experiences are dreams?" Asana suggests softly. Vimalata looks up in surprise. "You mean my waking life is also a dream?" "Not exactly," the monk replies. "I am pointing to something more fundamental. There is awareness that knows the merchant's experience. Awareness that knows the farmer's experience. Awareness that knows the beggar's experience. This knowing awareness, what is its identity?" Vimalata turns inward, searching for this awareness. "It has no fixed form," he says slowly. "It is present in every experience, yet it is not limited to any of them." Asana nods. This is what the teachings call Buddha nature. It is the awareness that can appear as merchant or farmer, human or animal, joy or sorrow, while remaining essentially unchanged. As this insight begins to settle, Vimalata looks around the monk's simple room with new eyes. "Are you saying that the awareness through which I experience life is the same awareness through which you experience life?" Asana smiles gently. "What does your own inquiry reveal?" Vimalata reflects deeply. "It is as if consciousness were like space," he says slowly. "Individual identities are like rooms built within that space. The rooms differ, but the space itself is continuous. That is a helpful image, Asana replies. The space of awareness is not divided by the walls of identity, even though from within each room, separation appears real. In the weeks that follow, Vimalada's dreams become less frightening and more illuminating. He begins to recognize that every identity is a temporary expression of the same underlying awareness. This realization transforms his way of living. When he looks at his workers, he no longer sees separate lives unrelated to his own. He senses the same consciousness looking back at him through different eyes. His business practices gradually change, not because he forces himself to be kind, but because compassion arises naturally when he recognizes others as reflections of himself. The dreams grow less frequent as their meaning becomes integrated into his waking life. When they appear, he observes them with curiosity rather than fear, seeing them as awareness exploring its own possibilities. Months later, Vimalata returns to visit Asana. "The dreams taught me something I could not learn any other way," he says quietly. "They showed me that identity is fluid and temporary. The awareness that experiences life as me is the same awareness that experiences life as everyone else." "And how has this understanding changed your life?" Asana asks. Vimalata smiles softly. "Everything is the same, and everything is different. I still live my life, still conduct business, still have my habits and preferences. Yet beneath all of it, I know these are temporary expressions, not my true essence." He gazes through the window at birds resting on branches. "I feel less separate from others. When I help someone, it feels like awareness helping itself. When I see beauty, it feels like awareness recognizing its own reflection." Asana nods gently. This is awakening, not escaping life, but seeing life as Buddha nature expressing itself in countless forms. Years later, when other merchants ask Vimalata about his transformation, he tells them the story of his dreams. "They taught me that what I believed to be my fixed identity was only one temporary role in a much larger play. When you understand that the consciousness behind your eyes is the same consciousness behind every pair of eyes, business becomes a form of practice, and success becomes service to the whole." Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, consider your own dreams. The awareness that experiences your dreams is the same awareness that experiences your waking life, present, unchanged, open. This awareness, which knows every thought and feeling while being limited by none of them, is your Buddha nature. It has appeared as every version of yourself you have ever been, every character in your dreams, every moment of your life. Yet it remains free, clear, and awake. Let your breathing slow. Let your body soften. And as you rest in this spacious awareness, feel how the unity beneath all differences has been present all along. As this gentle journey draws toward its quiet closing, notice how these stories have deepened your rest. Huick's meeting with Sankan revealed that what we seek is the very awareness that seeks. Huinong's poem showed that the mirror of consciousness needs no polishing, only recognition. The old woman's tea demonstrated awakening expressed through ordinary presence. Vimalata's dreams revealed how awareness explores many identities while remaining unchanged. Feel how your body has grown heavier, your breath slower, as these insights settle beyond words. The peace you have been searching for is the consciousness that has been searching. As we approach the final stages of this journey, we turn toward the profound rest of simple being, the understanding that there is nothing to attain, nothing to fix, nothing to become. The seeds of recognition planted tonight will continue to unfold quietly in dreams and silence. For now, simply rest in the vast awareness that knows all experiences without being bound by any of them. Feel yourself carried toward the deepest rest of all, the realization that what you seek is what you already are. And in the misty mountains of ancient China, where clouds drift slowly between peaks like thoughts across an open mind, a solitary monk sits quietly on a cliff, known to the world as Lazy Cloud. Yet the master did not answer immediately. His gaze remained lifted toward the open sky, where pale clouds moved slowly through the endless blue. Fian waited, then spoke again with quiet persistence. Surely there must be something more than simply watching clouds. He said softly, "What methods do you follow? What teachings guide your practice? How do you cultivate wisdom and compassion?" Lazy Cloud smiled faintly, still facing the sky. "When hunger comes, I eat," he said gently. "When weariness arrives, I rest. When sunlight touches the earth, I feel its warmth. When rain falls, I listen to its voice upon the roof. What else needs to be cultivated?" Fian felt a subtle frustration rise within him. These answers seemed too simple, too ordinary, too far from the profound teachings he had studied for years. "But what about the noble truths?" he asked. "What about the Eightfold Path? What about all the teachings that show us how to end suffering and reach liberation?" This time, Lazy Cloud turned slowly toward the young monk. In his eyes there was kindness, and also a quiet, playful clarity. "Tell me," he asked softly, "are you suffering right now?" Fian began to answer automatically. He listed his worries, his doubts, his longing for deeper realization, his fear of not progressing fast enough. Then he stopped. He noticed where he was, sitting on a quiet wooden porch, breathing cool mountain air, listening to wind moving through pine trees. Surrounded by stillness and beauty, he searched for suffering in this moment and found none he could truly touch. "Well," he said slowly, "right now I feel peaceful. But I know suffering will return when circumstances change, when difficulties arise, when my mind becomes restless again." Lazy Cloud nodded gently. "And when that happens," he asked, "will you still be sitting here, breathing mountain air?" "No," Fian replied. "I will be somewhere else, in different conditions, with different thoughts and emotions." The master's voice remained calm. "So you wish to solve the troubles of moments that have not yet arrived, while overlooking the peace of this moment that is already here?" Something in these words halted Fian's thoughts completely. He realized how much energy he had spent preparing for imagined futures, while neglecting the quiet ease available in the present. "But surely," he said after a pause, "we must prepare for challenges. We must develop wisdom and strength to face whatever life brings." Lazy Cloud nodded slowly. "When challenges appear, we meet them. When practice is needed, we practice. When wisdom is required, it arises naturally from awareness. But trying to fix tomorrow through today's worry creates suffering in a moment that might otherwise be peaceful." As the afternoon unfolded, Fian gradually stopped asking questions. He began simply to sit beside the master. The urgency to understand something extraordinary faded little by little. In its place came a quiet appreciation of being alive, of breathing, of noticing, of sharing silence on a mountainside. When the sun began to sink, painting the sky in soft amber and violet, Lazy Cloud prepared tea. It was simple tea, hot water poured over ordinary leaves. Yet when Fionn tasted it, it felt perfectly suited to this moment. Not remarkable, not special, just complete. "Master," Fionn said quietly, "I feel as if I am beginning to understand something, but I cannot explain it." Lazy Cloud smiled. "The most essential understanding cannot be explained," he said softly. "Words can point toward truth, but they can also pull us away from directly experiencing it." Fionn reflected for a moment. "I feel that I have made enlightenment into something complicated," he said slowly, "something that requires constant effort and achievement. But perhaps it is simpler than I believed. Perhaps it is just being present, responding naturally to what appears." Lazy Cloud looked again toward the drifting clouds. "What do you think Buddha nature is doing when you watch the sky?" he asked gently. Fionn rested his attention in the act of seeing. "Buddha nature is watching clouds," he said quietly. The master nodded. "And is there any difference between Buddha nature watching clouds and you watching clouds? Is Buddha nature something separate that must be reached? Or is it simply the awareness that knows these colors, these shapes, these movements?" A profound simplicity began to unfold in Fionn's mind. "So you are saying," he whispered, "that what I am right now in this ordinary moment of awareness is already Buddha nature expressing itself? What else could it be?" Lazy Cloud replied, "The consciousness that sees the sunset, that tastes tea, that naturally feels compassion for others. This is Buddha nature. Not something to develop, not something to achieve, but something to recognize and trust." That night, as they prepared to sleep, Fionn felt a peace deeper than anything he had known through years of effort. Not because he had gained something new, but because he had stopped trying to become someone else. "Master," he asked softly in the darkness, "if enlightenment is so simple, why do so many people practice for decades without finding peace?" Lazy Cloud's voice flowed gently through the night air. "Because they do not trust their own nature," he said. "They believe it must be improved, purified, or perfected before it can bring happiness. But Buddha nature is already whole, already peaceful, already present. It only suffers when it tries to become something other than what it is." Wind moved through the trees, filling the silence between them with a quiet rhythm. "Your practice," the master continued, "is not to reach a special state, but to recognize the awareness that is already here. When you trust this awareness, everything becomes practice: eating, walking, working, resting, even doing nothing at all." Fionn stayed at the hermitage for several more days. Gradually, he felt this understanding settle not only in his mind, but in his body, in his breath, in the way he moved through each moment. When he stopped trying to be enlightened, presence appeared naturally. When he stopped measuring his progress, contentment arose without effort. When he stopped seeking extraordinary experiences, ordinary moments revealed their quiet completeness. When it was time to leave, Fionn bowed deeply before his teacher. "Thank you," he said softly. "You have shown me that what I was seeking was what I already am." Lazy Cloud smiled gently. "I did not show you anything," he replied. "You simply paused long enough to notice your own nature. This recognition is available to everyone, in every ordinary moment." Years later, when Fionn had become a teacher himself, students often asked him about the most important teaching he had ever received. He would tell them the story of Lazy Cloud and the wisdom of doing nothing special. The deepest understanding, he would say quietly, is realizing that what you are right now is already the Buddha nature that all teachings point toward. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to reach extraordinary states. You only need to trust the awareness that is already present. Tonight, as you settle gently into sleep, remember this teaching. You do not need to achieve anything. You do not need to change yourself. The awareness that hears these words, that feels your body resting, that allows your breath to soften, this is already your Buddha nature. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles loosen. Like clouds drifting across a wide sky, thoughts appear and disappear. Yet the sky of awareness remains open, quiet, complete. As your breath becomes lighter, feel awareness settling naturally, like dust in still air, like water returning to its own level, like all things gently finding their source. There is nothing more to seek, nothing more to fix, nothing more to achieve. Only the quiet recognition that what you have been searching for is what you have always been. Rest now. Let consciousness relax into its own nature, vast as space, gentle as breath, peaceful as deep sleep, clear as open sky. Sleep comes without effort, and in this soft descent into silence, there is no one striving, no one achieving, no one becoming. Only awareness resting in itself. Like light returning to light. Like silence deepening into silence. You are home. You have always been home. Sleep in the quiet peace of recognition, held by the boundless awareness that you are.